Okay, so in this video, we're going to be going over Diva's signal flow. Just to kind of give you an example of what I mean when I say signal flow, if you think about the context of recording a vocal in a studio, for example, say you're recording a vocalist through a mic, through an XLR cable, which would then go into a preamp and then go into the mixer, and so on and so on and so on. And the kind of path that you choose for that signal or that piece of audio to travel through will have a really big impact on the final result. And the same can be said in synthesis. So in any synthesizer, you basically have a point of origin of the sound, which would be the oscillators. And then depending on the type of synthesis that you are using, the signal flow will vary. Diva is a subtractive synth, which is widely considered as kind of the staple or the kind of most widely used form of synthesis. And just to give you a kind of good analogy you can kind of use or think about when thinking about subtractive synthesis would be if you imagine a kind of sculptor making a sculpture out of marble or stone. You know, they'll start with this really big slab of marble or stone, and then to get the result that they want, they'll subtract from it over time. So just basically chip away at the sound until you have something which you like. And the same can be said in subtractive synthesis. You essentially start with a wall of sound or a wall of harmonics, which is created using the various parameters in the oscillator section, which we're going to be getting into more detail in later videos. And then after that kind of wall of harmonics or wall of sound is created, you then kind of sculpt the sound using both the kind of just basic volume controls, really, which control the volume for each oscillator, and then a mixture of filtering, which you can see in this section. You have a bunch of filters to choose from, which will filter out various frequencies, so you can kind of make the sound darker, lighter, remove some of the low frequencies to make it less bassy. You can even accentuate certain frequencies by using the resonance control as well. And then once this kind of rich wall of harmonics has passed through the amp and the filter to filter away frequencies, you then have control in terms of how the sound behaves over time using various envelope controls as well. So that's the kind of basic signal flow. You have the oscillators creating the wall of harmonics. You can control how this sounds using the volume in the mixer. You also, by the way, if you change away from triple VCO to any of the other oscillators, you have the option for another filter as well, which is a high-pass filter that you can use as well. So the high-pass filters essentially remove the low end from the sound. And then once you've done kind of filtering the frequencies that you don't want in the sound, you then again have the option to change how basically the amplitude of the sound over time. And we're going to be going into much more detail in terms of what each of these individual parameters does in the future videos. But really, the main thing to bear in mind really is that the signal starts here and kind of ends after the effects. So the sound goes from the oscillators through the mixer or high-pass filter, depending on what you select, then through the main filter in Diva, and then through the envelope 1, which is the amplitude envelope, and then you have envelope 2 here, which by default is shaping the frequency of the sound as well. So envelope 1 is amplitude, and envelope 2 is the modulation envelope, which is modulating the filter and frequency of the sound over time as well. And then in addition to this kind of basic signal flow, we've got we can also modulate various parameters in the synth. And essentially what this means is that instead of all these parameters just staying stationary while the sound is being generated, you can actually automate parameters like this. Like you can see I'm doing just manually here on the cutoff parameter. You can actually automate various parameters to be so that they're changed over time, which really is where you start to get more advanced into sound design, and you kind of make more interesting sounds that actually have movement. And the LFOs are one of the best ways to do that, as well as the various options in the modifications and trimmers tabs that we're going to be getting into in later videos. So that covers the basic signal flow of Diva. In the next videos, we're going to be taking a look at the oscillator section and the mixer, getting into a lot more detail in terms of what all these parameters actually do, how they work together, and also the differences between each of these that you can actually select as well. Kind of going over what each of these different modules that you can select is best for, and just some practical sound design advice as well. So yeah, that's it for this signal flow video. Let's have a look, start having a look into the oscillator section of Diva.